Step by step, ooh baby, gonna get to you, girl.
This is Radio Boston. I'm Anthony Brooks.
And I'm Meghna Chakrabarti.
Step by step, ooh baby, gonna get to you, girl. Step by step, ooh baby, really want you in my world.
Yeah, Donnie, Danny, John, Jordan, and Joey.
Shocking as it may be to some, even Anthony Brooks knows the name of those 5 boys from Boston who are the New Kids on the Block.
Even if I'm a little outside the demographic of their typical fan, right?
But, Anthony, you mean you're not a now 30-something woman who, when she was 18, plastered her walls with NKOTB posters and swooned and screamed at just the first few notes of Step by Step?
Yeah, no.
All right, well, whether you love or hate the music, there is absolutely little doubt that back in the 80s, the New Kids were the group that revamped the boy band phenomenon. The music, the look, the business, all of it. And their story is told by self-confessed blockhead music journalist Nikki Van Noy in her new biography, New Kids on the Block, 5 brothers and a million sisters. Nikki Van Noy, welcome to Radio Boston.
Thank you for having me.
So listeners, I know there are a lot of you out there because I sent a tweet earlier and I got a lot of tweets back. So are you an NKOTB fan? What do you remember about how much you loved them or maybe didn't back in the 80s and 90s? And are boy bands today the same or better than the New Kids? And what effect did NKOTB have on pop music as we know it today? Call us at 1-800-423-8255. That's 1-800-423-TALK. All right, Nikki, so first tell us, when was your first encounter with the New Kids?
It was in 1989, my first concert, and I think I had a pretty typical experience, as someone explained in the book, of marching in with my jean jacket and scrunchies and going crazy there.
Jean jackets, scrunchies, acid wash jeans, the whole
exactly.
deal. So, but what turned you from a fan into someone who wanted to actually write a biography of this group?
Well, I have to say, I was a fan growing up. I'm in that age group. And I was aware of the reunion and happy to hear about it, but was kind of watching it from a distance.
The reunion in 2008.
Yes, exactly. And the way I came to this book was I actually wrote a book about Dave Matthews Band and saw the parallel there between the band-fan interaction. And that's what led me to New Kids on the Block. They have that same dynamic.
So describe that dynamic for people who aren't the 30-something screaming woman today. What is that special something that New Kids on the Block have or had and have with their fans?
You know, it's a really hard thing to explain because it's very intangible. I think you almost have to go to a show to see the back and forth. And especially the modern day New Kids are just so up close and personal with their fans. The fans really are the 6th member of the band.
The 6th member of the band.
Yes.
Because they're a key component of what makes the New Kids the New Kids.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go back in time, though, and start at the beginning of this phenomenon. For people who don't remember, that Donnie Wahlberg was really kind of at the center of it. Tell us a little bit about him when he was just a teenager in Dorchester.
So Donnie grew up here in Dorchester. He was the 8th in a family of 9, a very large family, not very well off, to say the least. And his experience prior to this was him and Danny Wood, who's also in the band, were just doing their own little pickup rap and dance routines. And then he was brought into an audition with Maurice Starr, who began this group.
Who was once in New Edition.
He managed
New Edition.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly. And Donnie was the first New Kid with his brother Mark, who we all know.
Well, what I find interesting is you wrote in your book that Starr wanted to basically recreate New Edition, but with a group of young white boys instead of African American. Do we know sort of why he wanted to move in that direction?
You know, I actually didn't speak with Maurice for this book, so I can't speak to what the mindset was there. I think he saw a market. But the interesting thing is they were marketing the New Kids when they first broke as an R&B group to black audiences. So it's a little bit turned around.
Well, actually, what I found one of the things most interesting about your book is in these early years, this is a part of the story that I just didn't know, is the influence and effect and sort of crossover in the boys' own experience with race in Boston as well. And so we've got a little bit of tape here of Donnie Wahlberg speaking on CBS a little earlier this week. Because when he was growing up and in school, Boston had just basically undergone the convulsion over busing. And so here he's talking about the influence that had on his life and the band.
You know, I grew up sort of as a dreamer. I was bused to school with the other members of my group in Boston. It really was what sort of shaped my life. You know, I grew up and going to school with all black kids and Spanish kids and kids of all different races, as opposed to just being in my own neighborhood. And I got to, you know, learn to dream and to imagine, you know, greater things for myself than I probably would have just, you know, being around the neighborhood with my friends and my older brothers and just, you know, imagining when I'm going to steal my first car like my older brothers were. You know?
And in fact, Nikki Van Noy, so much of the early sort of years of the band, they perform at a kite festival in Boston in front of a mostly African American audience. Their early videos go to BET before MTV, and they have this great sort of breakthrough show at the Apollo. Yeah. So how much is it that their courting and maybe that had to be proven in front of an African American audience mattered to their later success?
Yeah, and I think that almost all of them said that when we spoke was, you know, they came up in front of very, very hard to please audiences where they were clear outsiders, although to them they also, since they had been part of the busing culture, they were used to being in the minority. So in some ways it was also a natural situation.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking with Nikki Van Noy. She's author of the new biography, New Kids on the Block, 5 Brothers and a Million Sisters. And in fact, we have one of those brothers on the line, Joey McIntyre. He's a member of the New Kids. He was the youngest at the time the band came together. He was just 13 or 14 when he joined. He joins us now from Los Angeles. Joey, welcome to Radio Boston.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. So we were just
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Joe Mac.
So we were just talking a little bit about the early years when the band came together. What are some of your like strongest memories from when, you know, before you became this global phenomenon?
Well, I heard you guys talking about the influence of, you know, I guess the five white kids being a minority in predominantly black neighborhoods in Boston. And first of all, it was just one stereotype, you know, falling by the wayside after another for us. We were welcomed. I mean, you know, it sounds corny, but soul doesn't have a color, you know, and either you got it or you don't. And you know, I think there was more music going on in the black communities, you know, and you know, more talent shows and more activity in the arts. And so that was really where we got to cut our teeth and you know, go for it. And the Lee School in Dorchester was kind of our clubhouse. Mm-hmm. And you know, it was just a fun, safe place to do our thing. And you know, I guess we did have it because we always wanted to turn it out. We always wanted to rock the house, and we did. So I guess in a way, you know, the Apollo was a very exciting, huge night for us. But we had about 3 years of getting ready for that at places like the Lee School in Boston.
Well, Joey, you know, I sent out a tweet earlier today, and I got some responses from people who still love the New Kids. Lauren Lacono said that what she remembers is from being a young girl is giant buttons and screaming a lot. And Aoife O'Donovan, who's now a fantastic musician in the band Crooked Still, we've had her on the show a couple of times, she tweeted me and said, NKOTB was my first concert, I think 1987. I used puffy paint to declare my love on my white t-shirt. I was 5. You know, people remember like it was yesterday when you guys were in front of those audiences of screaming fans. What were you thinking, especially in those early days?
I guess it was kind of like a drug, you know. you just want more of it. You can't, you know, you're 15, 16, 17, 18, and it's nuts. I mean, it's so high octane that, you know, we joke now that we're much more refined as performers, but back then it was I guess the boy band version of rock and roll. You just went for it. Ironically, I just took my son to the Justin Bieber concert and realized how loud our fans were, that you could actually feel the sound, the screams like rushing by your ears. It's pretty intense, and I know everybody said the same thing
Well, I want to get one quick call in here if I can. Lisa, I'm sorry about that, Joey, but Lisa is calling from Cleveland, Ohio. Lisa, you're on the air.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
I just wanted to call and say I absolutely love the book. It's such a nice surprise. I thought it was going to be a lot of stories we had already heard, but I'm only on chapter 5 so far, and I have been cracking up. I get tears in my eyes. It's awesome. I tweeted Nikki last night. I hit my favorite part so far was the story about Jordan hearing a commotion outside the bus when you guys all shared the bus, and he looks out the window and it's Donnie strangling Joe. And no offense, Joe, but I thought that was hysterical.
Lisa,
I did too.
Thank you so much for your call. We just got a couple minutes left, and I'm sorry it's so short. But Nikki, I just wanted to ask you briefly. I mean, it's the abiding influence of the New Kids on music, which I also find very fascinating. I mean, do you think that like they really did set the standard for what we kind of just consider your stock and trade boy band now?
I absolutely do. And I think that that's the difference between them and the boy bands that have come after. First of all, they predated the term boy band. And second of all, it's like now you have these archetypes for the members of boy bands. And with them, it was an organic thing.
And Joey, on that front, do you think that, I mean, you guys were new at the time, New Kids, obviously. Are there just too many bands that are trying to follow in your footsteps today?
No, I don't think so. I think, the cream rises to the top, and every band is different. And we always say we're part of history. I mean, New Edition in our hometown were our heroes, and the Temptations and Jackson 5 before that. But before I go, I want to agree with the caller, and I think Nikki did an amazing job, and there is new information. I mean, we've been together for a long time, but what I loved about the book, I think that we all kind of opened up in a way, and Nikki did a great job of kind of poking us in the right way to get stories that, really kind of tell a different story. So that was cool. I have to give a shout out to Nikki. Sorry.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, Joey McIntyre, the youngest member of the New Kids on the Block, joining us today from Los Angeles. Joey, thanks so much for spending some time with a hometown radio station.
And I'm so glad we finally made it to public radio. We're cool enough for public radio.
You are definitely cool enough. There are a lot of people who work in public radio who are right in your audience, let me tell you. Joey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Nikki Van Noy, author of the biography New Kids on the Block, 5 Brothers and a Million Sisters. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.
And listeners, send us all your memories, good, bad, when you swooned, when you screamed, anything that you remember about Boston's first and foremost boy band, New Kids on the Block. You can do that at radioboston.org. And stay with us because coming up, Muslim American comedy comes to the Regent in Arlington. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty with Anthony Brooks. This is Radio Boston.